Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I am joined by my two co-hosts, Michael Hall and Michael Reed. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. But we are rejoined by Redskin great Mr. Kedric Golston himself. How are you doing on this hot Monday, sir?
Gentlemen, thanks for having me.
Of course, sir. And training camp starts this week. It's a big, exciting time for everybody because hope is still alive. Now, you were one of the figureheads for this defensive line to your playing career, and the Washington Commanders added Phidarian Mathis in the second round this year. So, kind of explain to us, how do you see Phidarian Mathis fitting in with this defensive line?
I think obviously he's pedigree. Coming out of Alabama, he was a productive player there on a really good defensive line, like Allen, like Payne. And, I think with the guy with his tools, with his power, with his length, with his quickness, sky's the limit. From a coaching standpoint, he's got a lot of tools you need in order to be successful. Now, he's coming out of what some people say a two-gap kind of scheme, but, more react-attack, kind of like Allen and Payne. But with the Washington Commanders being a more vertical front, he's going to be learning on the fly, and, he has a ton of potential, and, sky's the limit. He wasn't a first-round draft pick like those other two guys from Alabama, but he still has that same type of ability. The one thing that I do like that the other two don't have is just his length in his arms, and I think that really translates well to the NFL game, and, being able to get whole offensive lineman at bay, and, really just use. So I think he's just, kind of like a blank slate, really, being able to be molded and go out there. And, I think, his best football is ahead of him.
Right. Yeah, I really like that pick. I think it was kind of overlooked at first. People didn't understand it, but it makes a lot of sense with the way that the offseason went. But keeping it on the D-line, of course, big news. Chase Young, of course, had that devastating injury last year. Kind of performed below expectations, I'd say, a little bit, especially compared to Booger McFarland's, who was expecting him to have 20 sacks next season and break the forced fumbles record. But what do you see from Chase? What does Chase need to do to kind of get back on track or to kind of overcome what happened to him last year?
I think, the one thing about the NFL is that it will humble everybody. Chase seems like a guy that loves football. For a young man, the NFL, both on and off the field, throws a lot at you. And I think my advice, I don't know Chase personally, but, sometimes you got to quiet a lot of that noise around you and understand that being a professional football player requires a lot of time, both study and so on and so forth. His physical ability speaks for itself. He's a physical freak, but that being said, he has to go out there, study himself, critique himself, know how offensive linemen want to attack him, and be able to improve on those things, to come up with a pass rush package that he can be able to go out there and execute at a high level. But more so than that, coming off the ACL, he has to be healthy. I think my advice to Washington Commanders fans would be patient. And if I'm making the decisions, which I'm far from and not, I would be looking for Chase to play, to be contributing midway through the year. And I know some people might sound crazy, but he's coming off of a late ACL. I want to see him go out there, practice hard, not have any setbacks, and get into a rhythm in practice. And be able to practice at that game type tempo before I go out there and put him in a live situation where there's no control around it. And I know that people don't want to say that, but I think that's the best thing for him moving forward in his progression as an NFL player.
It's really funny because I had a piggyback question for you, Kedric, and that was, if you could talk to Chase, would you preach patience or ambition? And you obviously explained that already. Sorry, Hall.
And to that, I believe all NFL players have to be impatient. You know what I mean? The best time the best you feel is the first day of training camp, and you're never going to be 100%. But understanding that this isn't just a bump. We all have heard the cliche: "Are you hurt or are you injured?" And Chase he wasn't hurt; he was injured. You know what I mean? So I want him to be able to know that he can go out there and do. But ultimately, the coaching, the medical staff, there's nothing wrong with being patient. You know what I mean? This is a guy that came out his rookie year and was really, really productive for you. And so you don't want to sacrifice the short-term gain versus the long-term investment. And so for me, I want to make sure I'm putting Chase in the best situation, to be successful, because like any young player, he felt he was pressing to go out there and help his team win, but I don't want him to feel that. I want him to be 100% healthy when he gets out there.
Right. And real fast, I feel like that's kind of the problem with like Booger McFarland making that prediction of like 20 sacks and 10 forced fumbles or whatever it was. Cause it's like, that's setting these expectations so high. And realistically, this injury that he's coming off of is very serious. Chase is a player who's relied a lot on athleticism. I know his technique's kind of been slacking according to some people. So it's like, you want Chase to kind of ease into it so that way he can be productive and not try to rush back like RG3 did and end up making it worse or getting too down on himself because he's not performing to what people are thinking. And it's frustrating because like this dude has all the talent in the world and you don't want him to rush back.
Oh, absolutely. I think, for me, people talk about, the fundamentals of pass rushing and so on and so forth. And those are learned behaviors. You know what I mean? Most young pass rushers, they're either speed guys, they're either power guys. They kind of have those, their set moves that they win with. But the longer you play, and just like quarterbacks, receivers, offensive linemen study film on you, they know what moves you like. And so you have to come up with that package to be able to go out there and, kind of play the game of chess with the offensive lineman. My old defensive line coach, Jacob Burney, used to use the analogy of, let's say you rush the passer 40 times and you have 2.5 sacks. Everybody would say, hey, that was a great day, right? But what about the other 37 reps? So that being said, you got to play the game within the game and understand that you take your chances when they present themselves by studying, by, having your tools, your pass rush moves, your swims, your rips, your counters, so on and so forth. But ultimately, how are you affecting the passer when you're not going to get a sack? And that's why I think everybody has such high expectations and hopes for this defensive front based off of pedigree and based off of individual talent. And they do have that. And I believe, they're growing as a unit. And once they really start to play as a unit and understand how each other's work and, their strengths and their weaknesses, I think the sky's the limit. Because, I believe nobody argues about the physical ability. And I believe these are guys that are unselfish guys that, enjoy playing football, get excited when other ones have success. And so it's just meshing that together. And, it's tough. 2020, they won the division and they won it, and you never can take that away from them. Playing a first place schedule in 2021, they had to play some really good quarterbacks, and there's a reason they pay these quarterbacks this much money. So being able to go out there and understand, how to defend, that top tier quarterback, I think is really important, because a lot of those guys aren't going to let you sack them. But how do you keep them off their spot? How do you not let them get comfortable in the pocket, so on and so forth? And so the statistics will come. I've seen guys beat a guy clean and the quarterback gets rid of the ball. And I've seen a quarterback fall on the ground and a guy, touches him while he's on the ground. A sack is still a sack, you know what I mean? But ultimately, you just want to put your team in the best situation to go out there and be successful.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And speaking of quarterbacks, flipping to the other side of the ball, there's been a lot of debate about what's a successful season look like for Carson Wentz this year. Is it like a X amount of yards, X amount of touchdowns? Does the team need to make the playoffs? What do you think a successful season looks like for Carson Wentz this year?
That's interesting. I say this just by looking at the trends of the NFL. It's easy to kind of compile yards. You know what I mean? And I think as a whole, we give quarterbacks too much credit and too much blame, all at the same token. So am I freezing?
Yeah, just a little bit, but you're good. Your sound is still coming through.
Okay. That being said, it's hard to say. Ultimately, this is the third year of Coach Rivera. They have their quarterback. I was a huge fan of Heineke based off of his story and just the guys rallied behind him. But that being said, he was limited in the vertical passing game. And, with the type of receivers that you have in McLaurin and Dotson, you want those guys to be able to stretch the field. So that being said, I believe, if he has similar numbers to what he had last year, and 27 touchdowns and 9 picks, but they make the playoffs, and they go out there and possibly win a playoff game, I think that's a huge success for this organization and something to build on in the future. In addition to the locker room believing in Carson, you know what I mean, and him endearing himself to the team. I don't know. We've all heard the stories, so I'm not here to speculate, but I do understand that when the team will rally around the quarterback, it's all that much better because he knows that they have his back and he has theirs.
Absolutely. And then I want to ask you a question. Based on your playing days, you played 11 seasons, 142 games. You were in a lot of matchups, and I want to ask you because week 1 against Jaguars, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, they're all going to be facing a familiar friend in Brandon Sheriff. And I want to ask you, did that ever happen to you in your career? And then do you think that there is any advantage to that? And do you think it goes to offense or defense?
It's funny, I was actually thinking about that earlier when I realized week 1 they was, playing Sheriff. And I can remember Sheriff as a young player and obviously, he's an all-pro. His talent speaks for himself. He's athletic. He's physical. He can do everything you want him to do. And it's going to be interesting because they are very familiar with one another. I'm pretty sure that when they get to week 1, Sheriff's going to stand up and he's going to give a scouting report on all the defensive front. He's going to say, hey, this is what 93 likes to do. This is what 94 likes to do. This is, so on and so forth. But that being said, I'm sure those guys have a ton of respect for themselves, for each other, and it should be a fun matchup to have. I can remember there's two that kind of come to mind when you talk about, friends, former teammates that you play against. I was fortunate enough. One of my high school teammates played for the Philadelphia Eagles, Andrew Gardner. And so I can remember Andrew as a young guy, a freshman, sophomore in high school, and us playing together against each other in NFL. And it was, kind of surreal and they kind of had that moment. But the funniest one is when me and Derek Dockery played against each other. Derek, I think, was in his final season with the Cowboys. And we're obviously really good friends. So we jaw back and forth the whole time. And even still to this day, I mess with him about a play where I got after him pretty good. I knew what was coming based off of the formation, and I kind of guessed and, really got after him a little bit. But it was fun because I can remember as a young player, Derek was, one of the better guards in the league with his size and his speed and his agility. So to be able to kind of get a little bit of get back there later on his career, that's something that I'd never let him forget about.
I remember those days. Derek Dockery was always one of my favorite players. Derek Dockery, he was just low key. And I remember when he left for the Bills, I was super upset about it.
Seemed like a really nice guy.
Yeah, he came back even better. But speaking of another offensive lineman from the past, it seems like Trent Williams finally getting the respect he deserves from around the NFL. What was it like going up against Trent in practice? And do you have, we asked, who was it who we asked this, Kyle, about our Trent Williams stories? Do you have any Trent Williams stories about him just being a freak of nature?
I do have one. Trent is as athletic as they come, and I would argue, and he's a top 10 athlete in the NFL, any position.
Damn.
And I don't say that just tongue in cheek. And I can remember, just to give you all a little bit of, and let's talk, he'll walk in a basketball gym and windmill dunk just off a drop step at 330 pounds, if that wasn't impressive enough. But the single most impressive thing I think I've seen with him was we were in off-season conditioning and him and Deshaun Jackson did a 10-yard race. And I want to say if Trent lost, it was only by a step. And so that just speaks to his explosiveness, his athleticism, and just, his love of the game. You know what I mean? And I'm, super proud of Trent, seeing him come in as a young player out of Oklahoma, and just to see his process and him being able to go out there with the 49ers and have some success that I wanted him to have because it means so much to him. He cares about it. And, he's just such a talented player that, you hate to see that wasted. And hopefully, he'll be able to, go out there and can continue to compete for Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree. Definitely, like you said, definitely happy he's getting the recognition he deserves because he's been at the top of the game at his position for a really, really long time. And No one's really talked about it till now, or until last year at least. But going back to the D line, a guy that's in a contract year was talked about maybe being a trade asset, but ended up staying on the team. And then they maybe even talked about paying him down the road. That guy's Daron Payne. What are you expecting from him this year in a contract year? And do you think that he'll have one of those big years to kind of get that big payday?
I mean, for me and my money, I think Payne might be the most athletic guy on that front.
Damn.
If you go back and just look at the nuance of defensive line play, here's a guy that's as quick as a cat, is as powerful as an elephant, understands leverage, pad level, pursuit to the ball. It's something to get excited about when you watch him just breaking down the fundamentals of D-line play. He dominates blockers. You know what I mean? He takes grown men and makes them look like wet noodles. And that gets you excited. And to have him in the middle of your defense, a lot of the stuff he doesn't show up on the stat sheet. But from a former defensive lineman, a guy that, studies it and watches a ton of film, I wouldn't want that guy out of my building, just because of the player that he is and understanding that I think Payne might be 23, 24 years old. Yep. So he hasn't even tapped into his grown man strength yet. Jesus. Even with, dominating people. So it's fun to watch because, all the things you hear about pad level, hands inside, looking through the screws on your helmet, all those things that D-line coach preaches from years and years. He does it, and he does it at a high level. And, I like to, when I watch his tape, it's almost like, teaching tape. You turn on his film and that's what you want, defensive linemen to play like. You know what I mean? It's he can be finesse when he needs to be finesse, but he can put his face on somebody when he needs to and really just be super disruptive. So, I know that might, shock a lot of people, but, I think for me personally, he's probably the most talented guy on that front.
Absolutely. Now, to wrap this up, Kedric, I only have a couple more questions for you, but Coach Rivera had a conversation with Nikki Giabala of the Washington Post recently that came out 2 days ago, and he had something he said that I want to ask you about. He said that he was confident in the team's maturity level, being able to take the responsibility of what's being brought out there based on the expectations of last season, getting a little bit overconfident. What do you think Coach means by that?
I mean, obviously, with them winning division in 2020, with people in the media talking about 20 sacks and breaking the all-time sack record, it's hard to handle all that attention, especially as a young team. Ultimately, like I said earlier in the interview, this game will humble you. And if you ever lose sight for just a second on the attention to detail, the preparation, the sacrifices you have to make both mentally and physically to go out there and compete at a high level, by the time you realize it's too late. So I believe Coach Vera probably sees a difference from a mindset standpoint of understanding that the time is now. You can't wait to turn it on in training camp. It was a quiet OTAs. You just want guys working, improving. You know what I mean? The more people talk about it, it's almost like, they're trying to cover up for something, but it's been quiet. Obviously, these guys have a bad taste in their mouth of kind of being, struggling last year as a defense. And having another year and understanding, hey, this is what I need to do to make sure that I'm the best that I need to be when I go out there and play. And so, maturity is a huge part of it. You know what I mean? Because it's being able to go out there and do what you need to do at a high level without, somebody having to essentially, hold your face to the fire day in and day out. And so maturity is really what separates, I believe, the good teams from the bad teams, because it's understanding what it takes to go out there and prepare day in and day out, week in and week out, because everybody's talented. You know what I mean? From the practice squad guy to the star, there's talent everywhere around this league, but it's the mature teams and mature players that go out there and are able to execute and play at a high level.
Absolutely. I love that explanation, Kedric. Last one I have for you. One of the things that players like to do at the end of games is exchange jerseys with other players. So if you played today, who are some players that you would walk up to and say, hey, man, can we exchange jerseys?
It's funny because, pretty much all the jerseys that I have are either former college teammates or guys that I played with that went to other teams. So, it's hard for me to say that, outside of, I would probably say Matt Stafford, just because he's a former Georgia Bulldog, guy I got a ton of respect for. Calvin Johnson, which he's not playing anymore, but we played together in high school. But
that
some
must
jerseys
have been insane.
Yeah, he was he was a few years younger than me, but I can remember like it was yesterday. My head coach saying, he's gonna be a great player, and for as great as a player that he is, I'm here to tell you he's a better person, a better human being. But I think the first jersey that comes to mind that I'm glad that I have is Lorenzo Alexander. Really good friend of mine. I have his Washington jersey. I have his Cardinals jersey when we played each other. And that was a really special moment because I can remember going out to eat with him, the night before the game, and he had his daughter Zoe with him, and I was joking with him, joking with her like, "Hey, we need to win this game, bet more than you do." So just the memories around that jersey is what really makes it special, and but it's just an exciting time. I'm one of those guys that love the toughness and the physicality of football, but can appreciate the skill of guys like Deebo Samuels going out there that doesn't have a position. It's just going out there playing football because, to me, it brings it back to like the core of like grassroots Friday Night Lights, man, where you got good players, you find a way to give them the ball. And if it's a receiver, you throw it to them. If you can't throw it to them, you hand it to them in the backfield, or you line them up at quarterback and let them run around. And it's just exciting to see the NFL, really starting to embrace just, hey, let's give these guys the ball and let's watch them play. And it's just a ton of fun. And, it's just an exciting game. And, you can kind of smell it in the air. You know what I mean? It's football season is back. People got a little bit more pep in their step. I know from, from high school and college and pros around this time of year, I start, I get a little bit short tempered. I start sweating a lot, just starting to do things that, or my body's telling me that, it's time to play football, even though I've been done. But, it's just an exciting time for everybody. And, the Commanders, hopefully Carson can go out there and, just keep it in between the lines, and the defense will be able to, play up to the potential that we believe they can, and that we saw flashes of, and that they can do it consistently week in and week out, so that we can all have a lot of fun in this area.
Yes, sir. I know you being a part of the launch of the Commanders name change and everything. We would all absolutely love the excitement in the area. Kedric, I can't thank you enough, sir, to come on here and join us on this Monday, being outside in this hot weather with the storm. Hopefully everything chills out a little bit.
Yeah, that's probably why you're sweating.
Yeah.
Well, it is hot, but with my kids being out of school, they're just so loud, and they're between, yelling at their friends on Xbox and doing all the things that they do. This was the only quiet place that I have. So by the airplanes overhead and the birds chirping and the highway in the background, this is the quietest place that I have right now. But man, I appreciate you guys, man. Great podcast. Appreciate the question and the love you always all show me, and can't wait to be back on.
Of course, sir. And hopefully we'll get you on through the season and have something really be happy and excited about. Huh?
Hopefully we won't be talking about why the D-line's disappointing. And
well, I'll say this. I said this on Doc Walker's podcast earlier today. I do think that we need to set realistic expectations for the D-line. I go back to a game in 2020 where they had 8 sacks against the Philadelphia Eagles. Right. You're not going to get 8 sacks.
That was week 1 too. That set the bar so high.
Like, you're not going to, there's a couple things that have to happen in order to get 8 sacks.
Right.
The quarterback is
Carson Wentz.
The quarterback is bad because he won't. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's holding the ball too long. And the offensive linemen aren't just doing their job. You know what I mean? So you can't expect 8 sacks a game in order to win. You know what I mean? That's not a sustainable formula. But 3 or 4 a game, affecting the passer, stopping the run, third down stops, all those things. That's more realistic, and that's where I think we should kind of hold them to. It's easy when a ball breaks up the middle to say, "Oh, the D-line, what happened?" Well, that could have been the linebacker's gap. That could have been the corner that was supposed to crack replace. so on and so forth. So, I want to always be fair to everybody and understanding that it's not always on the D-line. And, sometimes they can bail you out and make everybody look good, but ultimately it's the ultimate team game.
Absolutely, right. Kendric. I can't thank you enough, sir. Go and enjoy your Monday evening with those kids, sir, and play some Xbox. I'll see you on Call of Duty later.
Have a good one.
All right, Kendric.
That's it.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Kedric Golston. I love talking to Kendric, man, because he has thoughtful answers, and he gives it in a relational kind of way.
Yeah, right. It's definitely a way that everybody can kind of understand. And also, Trent Williams racing Deshaun Jackson and beating him, or right there with him. That's insane.
It's crazy.
Standing windmills.
And now that we are about to be joined by our next guest, we got to get into our fan questions here. And this one's from Scott Hartley. Oi, in the UK.
Oi.
His question is, Reed, what you all doing with these contributors? Go to work with, go to food, go out to eat with, go on a holiday with, go on a vacation, or go partying with. Of these four, Tony Shivers, Scouse Andy, Andy Lockhart, Orange Crush 92, and T-Mac. Ty-Mac.
Ooh.
So who are you going to work with, going to eat dinner with, going on a vacation with, and who are you partying with?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm partying with Scouse Andy right now, okay? Because the guy gets it. All of you guys get it. I'm gonna go to work. So it was Orange Crush, Ty, Scouse Andy, and who else was on there?
Orange Crush 92.
Yeah, it's Orange Crush, Ty.
Tony Shivers, dude.
And Tony Shivers. Okay,
Sorry,
okay. Which one of these guys makes the most money?
I'm not really sure. I could tell you. I don't know how much they make. I know that Ty Mac, he's a pipe fitter. So it's like he's in construction.
Oh, looks like I'm going maybe I'm gonna go party with Ty.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, dude.
Fit some pipes in me. I'm gonna go out to dinner with Tony Shivers and Orange Crush. Me and Orange Crush are gonna have a deep conversation just about life, and he's going to teach me some things because he teaches and he does it well. He explains himself well.
Yeah, I'm not going to work with Scott Hartley. I'm pretty sure he's like the OSHA equivalent, so he'd be taught left and right. He'd be pointing me for infractions that I'm doing on the job site. So who am I going to go to work with? I'll go to work with Ty Mac. Obviously he's in the construction industry, but who am I going out to eat with? Oh, man, I would say probably Scouse Andy, the Brits. Come over here. Let's go to Checkers. I'll show you a good time, Andy. I don't know.
Checkers, that's where you would take him.
Checkers, yeah.
It's like when you're asking to go on a date and the person's like, let's go to Red Lobster. Like, you're like,
all right,
what?
All right, fine. I'll be bougie with it. We're going to Texas Roadhouse.
That's good, though. See, that's okay. That's America in a nutshell, as you like to say.
Going on holiday with, I'm going with Tony Shivers. Both of us need a vacation. Let's go to Vegas or something, Tony. And then going out to party with obviously only leaves, Orange Crush 92, so we're gonna have a great time.
Well, judging by the UK draft party, it seemed like Andy can really throw him back, so I got to go party with him. Dinner, I'd probably say Tony, just because he's back in shape and everything like that, lost some weight. So ask him like, yo, what healthy food should I get off this menu?
Yeah, right, that's true.
Myself.
Have a nice dinner combo as well.
Get the baked potato. It's okay.
I know. Work, I would say I go Ty, like you said, just because it's construction. I was doing construction with you. So he's a construction guy. And then the last one, but not least, Orange Crush. What was the fourth option again?
Go on vacation with, right?
Vacation with Orange Crush. There it is.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, I said we'd have a conversation. I meant me and OC 92 would have a conversation in OC, the Orange County in 1992, because we would also get in the time machine.
Absolutely. That's a great one. Now we are joined by our next guest. Well, I should say rejoined, and he has climbed the ladder. I mean, my goodness, this guy, Jamual, Forrest, Litmall, we all know about him with his show, the Trap or Dive podcast, but he also does the Spaces on Twitter that is obviously very, very popular. But now we are joined by Jamual. What's up, brother?
Good.
What's going on, fellas? Can y'all hear me? Just doing the sound check right quick.
Jamal, at first, I thought your light up there was your head, the unit on your your CD player and stuff and your radio, and I was like, is this dude upside down in his car? What is going on right now? Is he just laying there with his legs up on the back of the seat?
I just posted up, man. I had to rush in from work. I knew if I went in the house, I had time to get set up, but if I knew if I went in the house, Dakota want her little 30 minutes to play and shit. I ain't got time for that. It's all some commander stuff before I step into the crib and give Dakota some time a day.
Absolutely. And let's start off with our fan questions, Jamual. And I want to start with this one. Commander OC's question. He wants to talk about our new lightning bolt, Percy Butler. Is he strictly special teams this season, or could he be doing more with the team going forward?
That's an interesting question. I am in the thought, like, when I first got around to Percy Butler, I liked what I saw in terms of, being that true free safety for Washington. Like, I like the idea of what Percy can bring in that regard and what he can bring to your defense. And when you think about all the other things, like we heard about, trying people out, Washington has trying people out in the Buffalo nickel role and trying Percy Butler in that spot, trying him at the nickel, like a true nickel slot cornerback type of situation. Like, you've seen all these things for Percy, and I don't see a spot right now where I think that he'll be like a key contributor defensively right away. Like, I'm not in that space anymore after understanding about the other players. Like, I understand where Ben is at, Ben St. Juste. I understand like the plans or what they're trying him out at. Like, they're testing him to see if he can play that nickel role, that true nickel role, or even fit in that Buffalo nickel space. And I'm like, okay, well, if he's there, where can Percy go? Because I'm sitting here thinking about Percy too. But not only that, then you got to think about Derek Forrest, the guy that I completely forgot about.
Mm-hmm.
They tried him at Buffalo nickel throughout the OTAs and stuff like that. So it's hard to really sit here and say Percy can really get on the field right away. And there's some things that I'm concerned about. Like, I don't think everybody's going to agree with this, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm not entirely too sure, like, in terms of like how he tackles and how he approaches players, like opponents, ball carriers in the hole and things like that. That he really takes the right angles and the right pad level to really be a physical presence in the box. So, like, asking him to do like multiple roles early on, I don't see it, but I can see him being a reserve spot, like as a post player, deep safety type of thing. And maybe it works out for him and he can develop down the line, but I don't see nothing right away. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Jamual, I call you the intellectual for a reason, sir. I mean, you described that absolutely perfectly. I mean, because you're absolutely right. I saw the same thing about Percy Butler as you did, where coming up in the run fit, being able to come up and clog lanes, bring down ball carriers, it wasn't evident enough. But I understand what you mean by he could be a specialty package guy. If you have multiple 5-6 DBs on the field, maybe he could be your post safety, your free safety there, where his job is basically, it's not dumbed down, but it's simpled just for the center field of it. And I could see that kind of aspect to it, but at the time being, that's where I see his extent. It's just being a special teams guy until he's acclimated, until he's ready to be a run fitter, can come up and make those tackles. I think you're absolutely right that he's just a gadget in the post free safety aspect of it. What do you think, Reed?
Yeah, I completely agree. Especially like his tape coming out of college. That's why I was kind of curious as to why he was getting so many looks at the Buffalo early on. I understand they wanted to see what they had, and who knows, maybe it's a role that's where an opening was. You want to try to get him on the field, but yeah, when you watch his college tape, it's pretty clear that right now, I mean, the guy is best back deep at safety, playing back there, and you're right. I think his angles are a little questionable. It's some things he's got to work on, but he's got the athleticism. I think it was Logan said that seeing him from the first couple of days of minicamp and then up to the last days when it kind of clicked and it started coming through was pretty impressive. So I think if it clicks and you can't keep him off the field, you put him wherever you can take him. But I think it's going to be more of a specialty package, like Jamual said.
Yeah, Professor Paulson, whatever he says, put it in writing. Anything to add, Hall?
Yeah, he called me his best friend, not you, Kyle. So.
You'll pretty much hit everything. I mean, like you say, I think he
better.
needs to adjust to the speed of the game, adjust to the NFL first, and get on special teams, make some plays, and kind of just progress as a rookie, and then maybe you'll get on the field maybe like halfway through the year or something like that.
Yeah, we need a new special teams ace with Shazer Everett currently not being on the team. But this next question, Jamual, I want to get your opinion on because I think this is a very good question. This is from our guy Ryan J. Bratt on Twitter. Hey, fellas, love being the show as always. How much time do you think Brian Robinson gets this season at running back? I'm still yelling that we didn't take Najee Harris 2 years ago over Jamin Davis.
This is another. You're right. It's another good question, and it's funny because like part of the when I had the sound hooked up, I heard you mention the Twitter Spaces thing, and you may have been in on this conversation or you may not, Kyle. I don't
was.
remember, but we talked about okay, cool. So we talked
Mhm.
about AJ, we talked about Brian Robinson, and we mainly focused on Antonio Gibson. But my thing is with Brian Robinson, I think honestly, so it was this article that I wrote probably like a week or two ago, and in the article, I ain't gonna lie to you, I stretched a little bit, but it's not like I made it up. I actually believed it, but I think my larger point, and when I said that Washington's offense, like defining success for Washington's offense, includes Brian Robinson taking over the starting carries, the number one carries for Washington. I think that's something that can be realistic for Washington, in that Antonio Gibson had 260 something carries last year, and with the increase in carries, and that's not including touches, like obviously the receptions and stuff,
Right.
like include the increase in carries, he obviously increased his fumbles as well, like exposures to letting the ball hit the turf. And while that's only been 2 years for Antonio Gibson, sure, you got to take into account the fact that they brought in a running back, and it's not nothing always to do like with just being able to protect the football. It has a lot to do as well with what you're seeing on the field when you get the ball. Like, how are you processing the line play? How are you processing your gaps? How are you reading the defense in which way? And how are you making plays in which the offensive line has done one job for you, but now you have to create as well. Like, you have to mesh and make a play for your offensive line too. So I think I say all that to say, with Brian Robinson, he comes in, I think he can contribute right away, and I think he'll be able to increase the level of production in the backfield. But I think that I don't know like how often and how often used he'll be early on to start the year. But I also think that a person like Brian Robinson is something that you can watch as the season progresses. And that's kind of where I'm a fan of. That's what I got my eyes into. And if you can get a guy like Brian Robinson who has the vision to execute the inside zones, the mid zones, because they run a bunch of power and zone schemes. It's not all based on like one side of the favorable the run calls. Like, they have a mixture of both. So if you can get a guy like Brian Robinson who processes a little bit quicker, he's a natural playmaker from the running back, he understands how to play it. You're looking at an offense that can really sustain something on the ground. Like, it's not just here and there or executing against lesser defenses. Like, if you can get a guy who can see the field just as good as your offense, can block things up, then I see a person in Brian Robinson eventually taking over the primary carries, while getting a guy like Antonio Gibson, not necessarily benching him, but getting him, like, say if you have 300 carries for running backs, you give Brian Robinson 150 150, and you can get Antonio Gibson 150. That's still an even split, but Antonio does not have the majority anymore.
I got you. You're not Linnell fried me in your space. I wanted to rebuttal, but I took myself out of speaker mode. But I will say, I know you wanted Najee Harris over Jamin Davis, but what I will say is the Steelers were a playoff team. They used their first rounder on a running back, and how'd that work out for them last season? So I know you wanted Najee Harris, but at the same breath, you have to understand a running back is a make or break. But I will say, what I meant in the spaces was that Antonio Gibson's yardage would increase, but his touchdowns would go down. And what I meant by that was defenses weren't going to be able to like stack the 8 box anymore against Antonio Gibson because of Taylor Heineke's arm strength. They weren't worried about the long ball. Well, Carson Wentz in there, they're going to have to respect it, and that's going to create more yardage for Antonio Gibson to work with. However, I think his touchdowns are going to go down, and the reason for that is because of Brian Robinson, and we had a guest on recently who brought it up perfectly of what encapsulates what I was trying to say, and that is Brian Robinson is essentially Peyton Barber and a young version of it with more spry in his step, you know what I mean? And so I definitely think Antonio Gibson is going to have that kind of good year. But with Brian Robinson, I would imagine early on, expect him to be short yardage, important downs, especially in the red zone. Red zone efficiency rate was poor last season, and they have to be able to generate more points. I think Brian Robinson in the red zone is going to be very, very crucial. Reed?
Yeah, I mean, you guys touched on Antonio Gibson, and I completely agree. I think it will definitely cut into it. I see kind of like you in a Peyton Barber role for Brian Robinson, only a little bit bigger. I think that somebody like him, like if you go back and watch his college film, his pass blocking, it was fantastic. I know NFL is a completely different game, but this way you don't have to have, it kind of gives you more, you can hide plays easier because you don't know if JD's on there. It's definitely a passing down because you can have Brian Robinson in there. It could be. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm not sure the split yet. I mean, we won't know for a little bit, but I would imagine that they really like Brian Robinson if they took him in the 3rd round. And like I said, this isn't a bad thing for Antonio Gibson. I think this will actually help him. It's going to keep him fresh. He's not going to have to do as many things that he used to have to do, short yardage. He's not going to have to constantly just run between the tackles. He's going to be able to get the ball out in space a little bit more. And I think it's only going to help him. His touches may go down, but I think you could see him be a more efficient player.
Right. I agree with you there. Jamal, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I really just wanted to just give the kudos. You brought up an excellent point, and Mike followed up. I think what you mentioned, Kyle, just with the quarterback alone, understanding that these guys did play stacked boxes a lot because the defenses were forcing Heineke to say to beat them with his arm. Like, all right, we're just gonna lock you up. We're gonna play these guys tight. We don't care about giving anything over time. We want to see if you can hit that. And I think you brought up a really good point. So to that regard, I actually give a little leeway to Antonio Gibson in that maybe things do get a little bit easier for him. To what extent we don't know, but maybe things do get a little bit easier for him in this year with a quarterback who looks to go towards the intermediate and deep levels that likes to challenge defenses.
Absolutely. Totally right there. And he has to obviously clean up his turnovers because, ball security is job security. Right, Hall? You got anything to add about your boy?
Yeah, I mean, like you guys pretty much hit everything like earlier. I think it'll lessen load for AG, but I think less carries would hopefully mean more efficiency on Antonio Gibson's side of things. And another way Brian Robinson can maybe get on the field a little bit sooner and a lot more often is this is a foreign thing for Washington, but if they're playing with a lead, you get to that 4-minute offense, you get a big bruiser like Brian Robinson in there, kind of run the clock out. Hopefully 3rd down efficiency goes up. He's moving the chains on 3rd and short, stuff like that. So I think it'll definitely be a big part. They drafted him in the first 3 rounds, and they said that these guys they draft in the first 3 rounds are definitely going to be big contributors. So I could definitely see him, especially when it gets cold out, a big guy like that running through the middle. It's going to be a lot of guys making business decisions, hopefully. So we'll see what happens.
Could you imagine Jay Gruden with Brian Robinson? A 1st down, he's just running it up the gut every time. Instead of 96% of the time, it's 100%.
Duo. Yep. That's all we running.
Right up the gut.
Now our next question is from the Discord chat server, and this is from our guy Tony Shivers. Thank you, Tony. Jamal, I'm gonna go to you first. Will Reed's crush Sammis Reyes make the final roster?
He's a thick boy.
Well, look, let's go to Reed first, and then let's figure out because I don't know if my comment's gonna be good or bad. So let's go to Reed first.
So honestly, it's like I like Sammis Reyes. I love everything that he brings. I think he did a fantastic job blocking last year, especially for obviously being so raw for football in general. But I don't know, man. It's a crowded tight end room. Like we've talked about that. I mean, you look obviously Logan Thomas when he comes back, John Bates, and then you have these young guys. I mean, you have Cole Turner, and then you have the 2 undrafted kids that are making some noise, and they could realistically make the team. Like, is there a spot for Sammis Reyes? But at the same token, do you want to put him on the practice squad because of his upside? He's also older though for a rookie player for a young player who's just learning the position. So how much leeway does he have? It's going to be very interesting to see what they do with him. I don't think that he makes the 53-man roster, but I don't know if they want to put him on practice squad, but I have no idea.
I think at this point they have a lot of options there, and no disrespect to Sammis Reyes, but I do think that he would be eligible for the practice squad, letting him progress and generate. I don't think a team would be willing to go that far to bring in Sammis. I don't think there's like that many tight end needy teams, but you never know.
They might need a blocker, man. He did
that's a good point.
Great job.
Number 2 tight end is generally a run blocker. To your point, Jamal, you ready?
Yeah. It's weird, man, because I remember last year at one point we had to stash Sammis Reyes, and I think did he started out on our practice squad or did he start out on the 53?
He's pretty sure it was practice squad.
Pretty sure it was practice squad.
I think so.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. I only asked because I was like, I don't know how much of a commodity he was last year, but I remember people was concerned. No, like in a sense because people he was athletic. Like people were really concerned that he can get snatched up. And I don't know, like after a year of playing or a year or a season under his belt and some time playing, I don't know if he'll get snatched up at all anymore. Like you kind of see that, he's raw in a sense, and he's still developing, but that blocking side is something that works with him. Special teams, he played on special teams as well, and they like to use him there, or I'm sure they want to use him there. I don't know like how he'll work now with some of the newer bodies there. AGG, Gandy Golden at tight end. He plays special teams as well. So how's all this going to work out for Washington, and how is Sammis Reyes going to fit in that picture when it comes to tight end alone? To answer that question directly, I don't see it. I don't see that, man.
I forgot about AGG. You're right. I don't think he's not making the
Yeah.
roster now. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't see about that. I don't see Sammis Reyes really making that bid for like the fourth tight end. If they decide to keep four, it really comes down to. I mean, obviously we know Logan Thomas is going to find a way to be on the roster, whether it's PUP to start off, but either way he'll be back on the roster. And you have John Bates, who's a guarantee, and then you go from there. Cole Holcomb, he's a draft. Cole Holcomb. All these Coles on our team is so confusing. but Cole Turner, you know, he's a rookie, but he ain't getting practice squatted. Like he's a guy that they want to use this year. So then you have to do addition by subtraction at that point. Like who's going to be the best value on your tight end unit on the back end? And that's when it comes down to the undrafted Cole and Curtis Hodges and Amani Rogers, and then you think about AGG. Like what's going to work? Right. And I think that's why that's one of the more underrated, or excuse me, it's a primary position battle, but it's like we're talking about like smaller names, like undrafted guys and position converted players, but it's still a underrated importance for this roster because like how is everything going to work with Logan Thomas gone?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think special teams is the ace in the sleeve for Sammis Reyes if he really wants to make this roster. If he could show that he could be on punt return, I think that would pay dividends for him. But, Hall, I want to go to you with this next question from Jeff Miles. I know you wanted to answer that. But his question is, he says, I warned everyone about the Deshaun situation earlier this year when we were in the quarterback situation. Not digging his talent, but the likelihood of him playing on top of learning a new offense, knowing what we know now with suspension possibilities reaching this year and how much it costed to take him, would you still have chosen Watson over Wentz? Situation-wise, not talent-wise.
I mean, y'all know how I felt about Watson before. I was always the guy of like...
You were really wanted him, like really bad. You didn't care about anything that happened.
No, I definitely care, but it was more like
like you even threw your name out there to go massage
people on Twitter trying to slander my name out here, man. Come on, chill. Yeah. I was one of the people where an 8-game suspension was worth it for 3 to 4 years of high-level quarterback play, which is what Deshaun Watson gives you when he's on the field and playing. So, I mean, looking back on it with the whole thing surrounding the organization, obviously it was never going to happen, and I know that if that would have happened, it would have been even more of a story. It would have been probably even more stories coming out. People would have done more digging. So it would have been a whole bunch of controversy. With all that being said, Deshaun Watson's my dude as far as quarterback play goes. So I would definitely still do it, but I understand why they didn't. I understand why they went with Wentz also.
I wouldn't, obviously not now, just because of it's going to bleed into the season to the point where it dismantled the Cleveland Browns' trust in the quarterback room. They're like having to go get Jacoby Brissett. They're looking to get other guys in the building. It's just a very bad situation for them, and I would love to have avoided that. But, like, with Deshaun Watson, it sucks because I really felt like he could have been the best quarterback in the league. And it sucks because that season was taken away from him. Either it was warranted or not. It's just unfortunate because the talent was taken off the field. And what he did down in Houston was absolutely amazing with nothing around him. Putting up those kinds of numbers and them only winning 4 to 5 games and him being the only thing there, it was amazing to see it. But unfortunately, I'll still go with Wentz just because of the capability that he brings. But I know that I was an advocate for Watson before. But based on how the situation has played out, I didn't think that this many people would be piling on after the fact, after the contract. And so with that, I say no, I would still go with Wentz. What do you think, Jamual?
That is the one deterrent, though. I would say that contract is so massive. It's kind of like, what else can you do going forward with all that like money just going towards him by himself?
Right.
Man, it's crazy. Like I've done a full heel turn. Like I remember when, you know, we were doing our eliminations of quarterbacks, like veteran quarterbacks, and Deshaun, Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson, and I say Derek too. Derek Carr was like they were among the common names that people would throw out there. I was on the boat with Deshaun. I was like, hey, Brad, I need Deshaun and DC. I don't care what it takes. We need to do it because look, we got to find a way to make it happen. And to be honest with you, like after everything that came out, not even because I'm not saying innocent or guilty with that stuff, but I'm just talking about his name in the media by itself. His name in the media, his possible suspensions looming, everything, all of that. And then considering Washington's current situation, that doesn't have anything to do with Deshaun Watson.
Right.
Like having him in this environment would have been hell. And I don't even know if I would have been able to take it. And after all these things that's been going on. So I'm so glad that Washington didn't do it. And D Watt is my guy in terms of a player. I don't know about the other stuff because I mean it is what it is. It's up in court. Everything's still being dealt with. But in terms of a player, that's my guy. And I'm still saying, hey, bro, I love you as a player, but hell no. I go somewhere else. You gotta go somewhere else.
That's the tough part with Deshaun. It's like he's so good, and you know what he could be. And I mean, imagine him with these weapons here, like Terry and Jahan Dotson and Logan Thomas, and a running game like we should have. Like, he would be fun to watch. But I mean, is he ever going to get on the field? You know, and you talk about being in the same boat, or you were in the Deshaun Watson, but last time Deshaun Watson was on a boat, I think was with Fred Smoot when they were both with the Minnesota Vikings. And,
oh Lord,
I'm just kidding.
That space was hilarious when Fred Smoot came on to talk about it. His rebuttal is that it happened in Minneapolis. If it happened in Miami or LA or Vegas, nobody would care.
It'd be normal.
That's a valid point.
I love Fred. Fred is hysterical. But Jamal, I want to get your question from the Colonel to you one time before I ask another one just for training camp, and then we'll wrap this up. But this question from the Colonel, Jamal, I want a prediction from each of you on how many times we are going to sack Trevor Lawrence in game 1, with or without Chase Young.
Well, let's have a quick discussion then right quick. Do you all think this is crazy? So, like, it's not with the question itself, but it's actually been on my mind with Jacksonville since the schedule came out. Because at this point, like when the schedule came out, we knew what the roster looked like for Jacksonville. And I hate that I couldn't just answer the question directly, but it's just how my mind works. Like I process everything. So I don't understand why people think that the offense for Jacksonville is all like is a cupcake for Washington. And that's not with the question, because I know we just said how many sacks. But when you think about that offense and what they did, they brought a competent head coach in there. They brought an offensive line in there that's more way more stable. They got Brandon Sherritt, but they also got like another guy that I'm not thinking of right now off the top of my head. But they kind of solidified that offensive line to help Trevor Lawrence out. Then you get Etienne back. So like now you have a running game to back. And my guy Christian Kirk, that guy is a dog. I studied him, one of my first receivers that I studied this year. He's a dog. So when he went over there, like we're not taking into account everything that they did to kind of help this offense out, to help Trevor Lawrence out. And he's a mobile quarterback. Guess who struggles with mobile quarterbacks, fellas?
We do.
Washington does. They traditionally struggle with mobile quarterbacks. So I just say all that to say that's my thought about Jacksonville in itself. To answer the question, I know I kind of watered it down with all this processing, but I'm gonna say you can still probably get to Trevor about 3 times with this defense, so long as they stay like within the scheme. Obviously, that common conversation and kind of work together, they should be fine.
Yeah, no, I do think it's going to be a couple. I don't think it's going to be north of 3 or anything like that. I think that the defensive line, what they should be gearing towards is generating pressure in the middle in order to force Trevor Lawrence out of the pocket, essentially just keep him uncomfortable. I'm more worried about quarterback pressures, getting in his face and forcing stuff on third down, long downs and stuff like that in order to get the offense back on the field. So with the sacks, it's hard to be able to tell that because we had Kedric Golston on earlier and we asked him, like, seeing a familiar foe in Brandon Sherritt, does that help you or not? And essentially it doesn't really, but Brandon Sherritt will be tipping off that offensive line to what our guys like to do. And I think that Jonathan Allen and company know what Brandon Sherritt likes to do. So if we want to be able to pick off on somebody, let's run a stunt at Brandon Sherritt. I think we'll be okay there. What do you think, Reed?
Yeah, like I've said it a few times, but I really think that the Doug Peterson acquisition for Jacksonville is
that was huge.
Like people I don't think really understand how big that was for them. Like you look at the success that he had with Carson Wentz, who's a very similar quarterback to Trevor Lawrence in terms of his size, his arm, his mobility, and they added those pieces. Like Jamal said, they're not as bad as people are making them out to be. This isn't a cakewalk. Jacksonville's going to be competitive. Will they win 7 games? I don't know, but they're going to be in every game just about this year. And Trevor Lawrence is say what you want about his stats last year. The dude still made a hell of a lot of plays with nothing. I mean, if you go back, watch some of the throws and plays he made, it's incredible. Like, I mean, the guy, and he didn't have a competent head coach. So I still think
he overcame Urban Meyer.
Right. Like, how much more do you guys need to know? I mean, just Like I'm gonna go 3, and I think that's kind of pushing it, but I do think we should win this game. But yeah, I think 3 is a good number. I don't think it's going to be a 2 years ago where we get 8 sacks against the Eagles and set us up for failure for the next 5 games, because everybody's like, we're gonna have at least 6 sacks this week because we
Right.
did week 1.
Trevor Lawrence looks like if somebody made a movie about an alien playing in the NFL, like that would be the acting.
He does, yeah, he does. He's sunshine.
He looks like my
literally.
little brother, which is why it's funny, because he looks just like him. Anything to add? Al?
He does actually weirdly look exactly.
That's true. I never. Yeah. Damn.
Anything to add, Al?
If they set the over under at 2.5 sacks, I'd probably go with the under. I think they're good for like maybe 1.5, maybe 2 sacks on Trevor Lawrence. But like you said, Kyle, I'm more worried about like getting pressure, getting in his face, creating 3rd and longs, 2nd and long, stuff like that, batting balls down like they were in 2020 all the time. So if you can't really get to the quarterback, at least make it harder on him for that day, get him off his spot, make him uncomfortable. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't think they're going to go crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if they got 3, but I could definitely see them getting maybe like 1 or 2.
Absolutely. And then let's wrap up this episode, Jamal. I got a question for you. One thing that you're looking forward to at training camp, either it could be a battle, it could be one position in particular, one player you're looking forward to seeing how they look. What are you looking forward to at training camp starting this week, Mal?
There's a ton of options and ton of routes I can go, but I think for me, I'll stick with a narrative that I've been following ever since they drafted him. Is Phidarian Mathis. I'll leave the other conversations for everyone else, but I want to see how Phidarian Mathis is adjusting and developing for the Commanders at training camp against guys his size, that's bigger, that's faster. Some that may be bigger, some that may be faster and stronger. But also obviously how he works with the pads on, because one of the things that comes around training camp and even before, that comes before training camp is like you have these one-on-one battles at times, but it's always one side that has the advantage, but it's never like equal because you don't have pads on. Like somebody can be more physical than the other side. And for me, Big Phil is somebody where I'm so interested in seeing how he stacks up in the interior side of the offensive line. The interior side of the defensive line and how he faces up against those centers and guards. Because if he can dominate or at least show that he belongs and that he can hold his own against doubles, that he can hold his own in terms of with his quickness and being able to get off the line quickly, which is what I think is one of the more underrated things, is that he's so quick for his size. I think that this is a person that can provide much benefit to Jamin Davis and Cole Holcomb, but also a sneaky addition to the defensive line unit altogether, because he's a selfless player and he can work so many line games. He can help free up other individuals. Like it goes so much if he's a guy that is as advertised for this defense. So for me, I'm gonna say Big Phil. I'm looking forward to seeing what he looks like this season.
Absolutely, that's a great one. For me, it's the offensive line. Chase Roulier coming back from injury. We don't know how the anchor of that offensive line is going to come back and look. And then Charles Leno getting the contract extension early on in the offseason. It feels like 3 years ago at this point. So excited to see how the big man LT comes back. Sam Cosmi's poised for a big year. He played well in the time that he did come back from injury. Let's see if he could play all 16 games. Then
got
adding
engaged too.
Then yeah, congratulations. He just got engaged today as well. But also the 2 guards that were added, Trey Turner and then Andrew Norwell. How do they mesh? Is Wes Schweitzer going to take that job away, or is Trey Turner going to earn it? And then Sadiq Charles, is he only going to be the backup left tackle, or is he going to be using jumbo packages? I'm really excited to see how the offensive line looks. What do you think, Hall?
I'm interested to see what Jahan Dotson's going to look like whenever their pads on and everything like that. If you go back to
the sexy pick, we went defensive line, offensive line. You had to go wide receiver.
It's an offensive league, man. You got to go offense. I'm just excited to see because, Logan Thomas came on with us a couple of times and said that from what he saw in training camp, he was eating up all the DBs that were covering him, except for Benjamin St. Juste because of the long arms, and he was kind of having trouble getting off the line with the press. And I know that was kind of one of the knocks on him coming out of college is his small frame. Can he beat the press coverage? So I want to see if he's working on his get off, if he's getting off the line better, if he's able to beat that press coverage, because if he can beat that press coverage, give us a legit number 2 option on offense, the sky's the limit for this offense with Terry on the other side. We don't know what Curtis Samuel's going to give us, but if he gives us anything as the 3rd option, the sky's the limit for this vertical passing offense and Scott Turner. So I want to see if Jahan Dotson is able to beat the press and do his thing over the middle.
Right. Yeah. to piggyback off that, I'm going to go with a position we talked about a little bit earlier, and that's tight end. There's so many tight ends. I mean, I completely forgot about HEG. And I mean, he's somebody who's pass catching, and all these tight ends bring something that we haven't had really in a while. I mean, obviously we've had Jordan Reed, who's a fantastic pass catcher, but I mean, seeing somebody like Cole Turner out there lining up wide, that's going to be fantastic. And then as my best friend / future best man at my wedding, Logan Paulson has talked about
my car.
Curtis Hodges and Armani Rogers. I mean, those guys have played very well. You said what kind of car do I drive? Those guys have looked fantastic, especially Curtis Hodges. I mean, look, they're both. Yeah. Or Curtis Hodges is 6'8". Armani Rogers is a big guy too. Armani Rogers is just learning tight end. He played quarterback, and so the sky's the limit athletically. There's a lot of good tight ends out there, and I'm excited to see what we get out of these guys.
Hey, I forgot one question. Let's do rapid fire with this. Really quick question, okay? Reed, I'm gonna start with you from Tim Towner. Daron Payne would most likely command $15 to $20 million, while a young stud linebacker would most likely want $10 to $15 million. Do you want to stand pat this year and lose Payne to free agency next year in exchange for a late third-round comp pick, or would you use his salary to go after a free agent linebacker?
Ooh, that's tough. After talking to Kedric, I want to keep Daron Payne, and I run this show, Kyle, so don't tell me what to do. But we're going to keep Daron
Payne. For me, I think it's just using Daron Payne this year, and then probably the comp pick. But what Kendrick said, Daron Payne most likely will have a great career, and it's unfortunate that I would like to see him stay here. Maybe Jonathan Allen would give like a little team-friendly deal to make it work, but we'll see, man. But most likely not.
That would be a punch in the face, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. What about you, Jamal?
This man said, all right, that was hilarious.
That went over my head for a second.
I was about to say, Jamal's
it snuck up on me for sure. Listen, if it comes down to linebacker or Payne, give me Payne, give him like a 3-year extension, and then figure out the rest from there. Or maybe give him the long term and then figure out the short term extension opportunities from there. But yeah, I'd extend Payne. It ain't no reason to let him go.
Oh, yeah, I'm a masochist too, baby. Give me the pain. That's a masochist is somebody who
I'm gonna make
pain.
up my own option C, which is both. Like, why can't you pay Payne and also pay a free agent linebacker as well? Like, obviously the cap doesn't exist. Look what the Rams do. Look what the Bills do. So why can't you get a veteran linebacker as well on top of Payne? So that's my answer.
Payne. I like the sound of that. Jamal, I can't thank you enough for joining us for this episode, brother. I know you're very, very busy, man, doing a whole bunch of film breakdowns, doing your podcast, writing. You got a whole bunch on top of your plate, and not on only your daily job that you do. But I really appreciate you, brother. But before you get out of here, just in case there's anybody watching that doesn't follow you yet, that would like to be able to come follow your podcast.
Yeah, hey, fellas, always appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on, and appreciate the patience, too, because I think we checked in like a couple of weeks ago to try to get this done. So I appreciate the patience working with me, Kyle. You can all find me at Let Maul Tell It on Twitter. Look, the M or Maul is MUAL, all right? So don't forget the U in my name, all right? Because some people, they forget that, there's unique spellings of Jamal. But yeah, at Let Maul Tell It on Twitter, and then anything else you can find the Chop or Die podcast on all podcast platforms, YouTube, Twitch, etc., all that stuff. So appreciate it, fellas.
Hey, Twitter has your username Darth Maul, man, but change the U to A. You know what I'm saying?
Look, cool. I'm staying away from all that. All right, I'm staying away from all that stuff. Let me go ahead and stay with Jamal. If anything I change to, it's gonna be Henny. It's gonna be Henny Maul. That's it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Actually, that's better than Darth Maul.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Everyone, have a great week. Be safe, and we'll see you again on Friday. Enjoy training camp. It's the time of the year is back, baby. Christmas is in August. All right, everybody. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
And it's July, but
I know. Whatever. It's the end of July, isn't it? At least I get half credit for that. All right, everybody. Washington football. Woo! Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. And if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you get notified when anything new is uploaded to the channel. Also, we just launched theburgundyzone.com. You can go there and find all of our latest news, articles, and the latest episodes that are uploaded. Again, we also have the Discord chat server, where all of our VIP folks are in, like Andy Burrows, Scott Hartley, Sergio Martin is in there as well. Don't miss out on the Discord chat server. Go and check that out. Until next time, everybody, Washington football. Woo!